So when I was getting ready this morning, I like to wear a ring on my right hand, and I was deciding between like 3 or 4 different ones because I didn't know what I want to wear, and I ended up picking one that is an A. So if you look at my name, why? When I became a full-time freelance writer 8 years ago, I added an A to the middle of my name. So my writing name is Jen A. Miller. And that's not even my legal name. And I did that for a very specific reason. If you know who I am, and some of you do, you know that I have this sort of persona as a no-nonsense, take-no-prisoners writer, journalist, advocate for freelance writers to get paid. But I'm not actually like that myself. I created this Jen A. Miller to get over some issues that I have with confidence. And that reason is because I was bullied. So, I was bullied in elementary school. It's a classic case, really. You see how small that class was. And there were 2 mean girls who ruled our Catholic school class, and they let me and everyone else know it. It wasn't physical. They didn't hit me. It was bullying by exclusion and whispers, levied by 2 girls, Kim and Megan. Kim was this tall, for a kid, brunette who every boy wanted, and Megan was this mean, brash girl who sort of pushed her way into whatever she wanted. And she spent most of her day worrying about her bangs, which she had sprayed into a perfect cylinder, like this, like you could see right through it. This was the 80s. It was the 80s. They didn't need to work hard to make me feel like that other. I would be one of the few girls in class not invited to a birthday party, and if I was invited, they would let me know that I got the worst party favor bag. Like a puke green scrunchie, which I actually still have. If our parents forced us to hang out, which they did because we all lived very close to each other, they would do the opposite of what I did. If I sat down, they would stand up. If I stood up to follow them, they'd sit down. I spent most of the time at Kim's house playing with her dog Buffy, hoping the dog would have puppies so there'd be something for me to do. I tried to make friends with new people who transferred into the school, but I didn't, not after Kim or Megan told them what to think. I'm still not exactly sure why they picked me, but I was different in small ways. My mom made me wear hard saddle shoes so I could pass them down to my sister while everyone else wore soft saddle shoes. I didn't feather my bangs or my hairspray. As you can tell by that wonderful haircut, it's possible that someone in my family actually cut it. This happened through 6th grade until I finally transferred schools. This might not sound so bad, especially now that bullying has transferred onto social media and gotten more malicious, where the Kims and Megans of the world can create I Hate Jen Miller Facebook pages and ask their friends to become fans. Recently, Facebook taunting led a 12-year-old girl to throw herself off a water tower. Still, the implications of being bullied are huge, even now 25 years later. Then I was depressed and withdrawn, full of self-loathing. Now I still have problems fitting in and worry that every time I make a new connection, that the ghosts of feathered banged adolescents are going to come out and tell them that no, don't be friends with her, or no, don't date her, don't hire her. That's where the Jen A. Miller persona comes in. This feeling of otherness could have led me down a very dark path. I could have rebelled in a lot of ways: drinking, drugs, sex, smoking, violence, acting out, becoming a goth. I could have run away. I could have started cutting or starving myself. I could have thrown myself off a water tower. But I didn't. I made it through that time in that school without ever getting into major trouble, though my mother might think otherwise. She's over there if you want to ask her. And by the time I reached college, I had had a total of 1 can of beer split between 3 separate incidences. Why was I so lucky? Because I had an out, that other place stuck in nature that keeps me sane and gave me a sense of self and security I'd never had otherwise. Every summer from 1968 to 1997, my family has spent their summers in Avalon Campground, a 60-acre place in Claremont, New Jersey, about a 15-mile drive from Avalon, the island, and about a half hour from here. My grandfather dropped my grandmother and her 8 kids there every June, every year, with tents and actual furniture, and picked them back up in September. My father did the same, though my mom drove herself down, and we had our own camper, and Dad was there on weekends and 2 full weeks every August. For me, it wasn't so much about being able to go to the beach every day, though that was absolutely part of it, as we know if we're fans of this area. For me, it was being able to be in those woods with myself, without other people who seemed to hate me so much for reasons I couldn't identify. That's me at 16. Even though 5 of us, 6 on weekends, stayed in a tiny trailer, I never felt so free. I was forced to leave the camper or else be given chores or get into petty fights with my siblings, which were always fun. So instead, I would ride my bike in endless laps around the campground, around the dirt roads, and through hidden roads and paths, or jump logs on tent sites that were almost always empty on weekends. Or I'd take my bike or walk back to the quarry, which is where we absolutely positively were not supposed to go even though our mother went with us sometimes, and sit on the soft white sand and wonder why the water in a quarry was so impossibly blue. It was there in those woods, even though the location was a slightly organized version of nature. Our camper, for example, had running water, air conditioning, cable TV, and the roads didn't just appear overnight, that I was able to recognize that there wasn't something grossly wrong with me. Part of that was being tossed into the mix of other all-summer campers who brought me into their fold. But mostly, it was spending so much time in the woods for a chunk of every year that let me realize a different reality. By getting out of a toxic environment and into a place outside where I was relatively unchained, as long as I was within those 60 acres or within walking distance of the family's beach spot on the beach, I learned to be clear of that nonsense and get a better place of myself and self-worth. Having that other place is important, and this will make sense in a minute, I promise. It's what saved me. But this isn't exactly a new concept. I didn't just make this up myself. Ray Oldenburg wrote about the third place in a book called The Great Good Place. For him, the third place was something focused on community building and something that drives social engagement, and it's a huge part of a lot of urban planning developments. This idea was also picked up by the pioneers of internet forums, Facebook, Twitter, those of us who remember, chat groups, things like that, that have proclaimed that their online spots where people could interact and create virtual communities are now the third place. So now we get to this. Does anybody recognize this movie? So this is a scene from You've Got Mail. And I actually wrote a graduate school paper about something unrelated, but that made me listen to the DVD commentary that Nora Ephron, who was the writer and director, God rest her soul, of the movie did. And she talked about the importance of having the other third place that was not your work or not your home. Now, I know most of you have seen this, but I'll just give you a quick update of what the movie was about. It was between Kathleen Kelly, who owned a children's bookstore, and Joe Fox, who was opening a big mega chain that was supposed to be like Barnes & Noble or Borders. Now, the movie is a remake of a classic film called The Shop Around the Corner, which was about perfume sellers. Ephron switched the commerce part to bookstores for an extremely specific reason, and it's also why coffee shops figure so prominently in the movie. It was because she figured that these spaces were becoming the third place, because people wanted to be there that was not their home or their office. Now, all three versions of the third place theory have their merits, but I don't think they're quite right. You've Got Mail was made in 1998, and I was working in a Walden bookstore in the Deptford Mall when it first came out, and I had another unfortunate haircut based on what Meg Ryan had in that movie. But at the time, a Barnes & Noble opened up a couple blocks away from the mall. And I remember it being a huge deal, and we thought we were going to all lose our jobs and we were going to go out of business because there were these huge stores with this unlimited selection of books, and unlike a library, you could drink your coffee. But since then, in this movie, Borders has gone bankrupt, and Barnes & Noble is not doing very well at all. Now, there are actual coffee shops called the third place after the Oldenburg theory, but so many of these corner spots in the entire Starbucks chain have turned into offices by people who come with laptops, put in their earbuds, and stare and scowl at you if you dare to have a conversation. How is that a third place? And if a coffee shop is a third place, what stops a bar from being a third place? And that's not exactly the best thing for all situations. And so I agree in part with the internet people saying, we are the third place. I love Facebook and Twitter, as anybody knows who follows me. I have almost 100,000 tweets. And I have a freelance writer forum where I spend a lot of time. But I don't think being glued to a computer or a phone is necessarily the best way to get into that other space. No, for me, that third place has to have a sky and not a ceiling. That's why we need to be so careful about preserving these not that outdoor space, but our outdoor spaces. So for many of us, there has to be that spot somewhere outside, even if it's somewhere to make that outside more accessible, like the ramps to get on this beach here, pathways to get on Higbee Beach, that kind of thing, that works together. Yeah. That's the pool at Avalon Campground. But that's what Avalon Campground became to me. It was my other third place where I could exist without the trappings of what were my home, and then at the time, what was an office for me, which was school. In that space, without being hemmed in, my brain and body could breathe. I could just be. I wrote in my diary extensively then, and when I was in this place and when I was not, but I kept, in the winter, going back to that place in my diary, and here's a quote. "I never liked the ending of summer. All of the peacefulness goes away." So that brings me to where you are today. I've written 2 books about the Jersey Shore and hundreds of articles, and a lot of people have asked me why. Well, because that's what this place meant to me. It saved me. And for locals who are from this area, and based on what Norris was asking us, a lot of us are, that's the same thing. The Jersey Shore is the same thing for a lot of us. This is the place we go here every year. It's sometimes hard to explain it to those who aren't from here. Why would you drive somewhere 2 hours away to sit on a beach and eat gassy fried foods, greasy fried foods, which end up being gassy? But this was asked to me by a librarian who was from Germany. And she said, why wouldn't you want to go sightseeing in Paris, or, she listed some other stuff that I don't know because I've never not gone here on summer vacation. It's because this place, even though it's a slightly manufactured version of nature, and that we support it, hone it, clean it, it's part of that outdoor space, that other place for me and millions of other people. It's restorative and brain clearing for a whole lot of us. It's why people are so relieved when it's their time for their annual week at the shore. When you're focused on trees in the sky, or jumping that log on your bike, or catching the perfect wave, you can shed those other things, like the Kims and Megans of the world who used to tell me all the time that only smart girls were ugly. And put yourself on another level of understanding if you need it. That's my father, for example. He hates swimming. Look where he is. But he still comes to the shore every year, and this is exactly what he'll do. He'll sit in a chair, or he'll stand with his feet in the water and read a book. That's him ignoring my sister. But that's what he wants to do. He wants to sit there and relax. Now, I obviously can't get here all the time because I live in Collingswood, New Jersey, but I'm a runner, and I make sure to run before lunch every day. That's because when this place is so far away, it's my daily dose of being outside. And even when I worked in an office, I would get in my car every day, take my brown bag lunch, and sit in the park. And there were all these other cars around me, but nobody else got out of the car. So this is my message to you. Get out of the car. I don't understand why this is so hard sometimes, but I'm sitting there eating my peanut butter and jelly sandwich, even though I'm in my late 20s at the time, and they're just sitting there in the car eating their lunch. No, go outside. At least get out of the car. You can do this almost anywhere. Sorry. You need to get outside. You need to find that other place that doesn't have piped-in music or is trying to sell you something. It doesn't need to be 60 miles away. It doesn't need to have a beach. It can be that park near work. It can be that space in your backyard. And I know it's getting harder to do this in big ways and small. To be completely outside in that place with a sky, not a ceiling, especially when you can bring your ceiling with you in the form of your phone or your laptop or your computer. For example, my last time in Avalon Campground, there's my laptop. But I was working on a book project, so that's sort of not surprising that I was actually doing that. But I was there. I choose to go there whenever I need to work on a big book project because this place is so special to me. Now, we had a tragedy here at the Jersey Shore last summer, as I'm sure you all know, with Sandy. And a lot of people have been asking these questions of, do we save the shore? Or do we pack up the store and go away? And I don't really have the answer to all that. What's the best way to preserve what we have now versus spending money on things that are going to just go away? So my answer is that we at least have to try. We can't just pack up the store and move away. So I've been writing a lot about FEMA maps and elevations and all that stuff, and people have asked me what to do, and I don't know. But the thing I'm going to leave with you is that I don't have an answer to those things, but I can tell you to get out of the car. So thanks.